Este episodio es presentado por Treats para Perros Busy Bone. Cuando estás tan busy que tu día suena así, pero tu perro suena así. Solo abre una bolsa de Treats para perro Busy Bone. Saca un Busy Bone y disfruta de tu nueva habilidad de mantener a tu perro busy. Cuando la vida te da busy, dale a tu perro Busy Bone.
George Clooney and Brad Pitt's new movie Wolves is on Apple TV Plus September 27th.
That's where I want you to be now.
So if you want to see George Clooney and Brad Pitt, go to Apple TV Plus.
You got to start the story there.
Or if you want to see Brad Pitt and George Clooney, go to Apple TV Plus.
I am enjoying the show.
And if you want to see their new movie Wolves,
You can't do it, I'm going to help you out. I can do it, so do it.
definitely go to Apple TV Plus.
Admit it, it's cool. Okay, fine, it was very cool.
Wolves, streaming September 27th on Apple TV Plus. Rated R.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Big Ten Football Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Guggenheim. We got my man, Kurt from Sky U Pod. But before we get to what we're doing here, make sure to like and subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Like and subscribe. Get that algorithm going. Do it here and make sure you go over to Sky U Pod. Do the same thing. Right, Kurt?
That's absolutely right. Appreciate that.
You guys have a pretty big game this week. If I do say so. I believe you guys are playing for a pig, right?
That's right. Yeah. Had bacon this morning and enjoying it all week long. You know, it's been a little bit since we've had them, so we've appreciated this last year and we're looking to keep them here a lot longer. So,
well, you guys will want to stay glued in to get our pick for that game. That'll be the last game we pick. So make sure you stay tuned in and locked in as we pick that game along with every other game in the Big Ten. Before we get into it, though, I do want to address some injury news. Tyler Van Dyke, starting quarterback for Wisconsin, it was mentioned that he is out for the season with a knee injury, non-contact injury against Alabama. Certainly just devastating news, especially for him. You know, he's getting a chance to transfer in from Miami to Wisconsin, and now he's out. Kurt, you never want to see someone get hurt, even from a rival. Any thoughts on the injury?
yeah, like you said, I mean, just really disappointing to see, you know, first drive of the game in a huge game there in Madison, you know, probably wasn't going to change the end result, but I mean, Wisconsin was moving the ball with him in there. What is the backup's name again? I'm not even remembering his name.
Braden Locke.
Locke, yes. You know, I know Badger fans were really high on him coming into the year, and it sounded like maybe he was pushing Tyler Van Dyke for that spot a little bit. So we'll see if he is as close to a 1B quarterback as maybe Wisconsin was thinking, but just a tough spot to be in. And yeah, feel for Van Dyke for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, you hope, you know, Braden Locke struggled coming in, and I was pretty hard on him and Luke Fickell. Yeah. I do think you have to, you know, you kind of get yourself back onto firm footing, and you're like, it's hard to come in relief. And, but you know, you hope
against a really good Bama team too.
Yeah. Yeah. They, anybody saying that there was going to be a drop off because of Nick Saban retiring, I'm not sure it's going to be this year.
No, not this year. You got to wait a little bit if that's going to happen, but we'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, I of the two powerhouse SEC teams of the past several years, Georgia and Alabama, I didn't expect Georgia to struggle as much as they did, but
no.
I'm sure it'll be one of those like, oh yeah, we were really bad for a game and we still won, and now they'll murder everybody by 50.
Yeah, probably.
So. But Georgia's not a Big Ten team, so we don't have to pick any games for them this week. We do have a Friday night banger though. Number 24 Illinois going to number 22 Nebraska. This is a top 25 matchup, and I got to tell you, I am excited about the matchup in several ways. I think the secondary for Illinois against Dylan Raiola, the defensive line of Nebraska against, I think, maybe a maligned offensive line for Illinois. I think the quarterback battle is fun. I think Matt Rule versus Brett Bielema is fun. Kurt, maybe before we get to scores, what are maybe a couple keys to the game in your mind for this one?
Yeah, for me, I try not to get too much into the stats this early in the season, especially when the competition is varying so much. What stuck out to me when looking at this game is just Illinois is the team between the two that has showed some inconsistency running the ball. And when a game is expected to be this tight, I favor Nebraska there being able to run the ball a little bit more consistently. And just as far as what unit I feel most comfortable in, I think Nebraska's defense is the best unit out of any of these, squads. But that being said, I do think Luke Altmaier's having a great year. The passing game is legit for Illinois. They're going to need big plays if they're going to win this one, in my opinion. I was shocked at the spread. 9.5 points I thought was very, very large. But, Vegas knows their stuff. I think Illinois needs to win a similar game like they did against Kansas. Defense forces some turnovers, and they're able to capitalize that way, because I think that Nebraska's run game and defense is a little bit stronger than theirs. But like I said, I like Illinois' passing game, so I think it's going to keep them right there with them.
Yeah, and to your point, I didn't say it. So this game is on Fox, 8 p.m. Eastern. The line has dropped a point since it's now Nebraska 8.5.
Okay.
So money's coming in on Illinois, which we'll see what the smart money, the sharps come in later in the week. It is a home game for Nebraska, so that I think that is
Nebraska?
something.
I thought it was at Illinois. That makes a little bit more sense that way then.
Yeah, so it's at Nebraska, and that's been an electric environment. We saw it against Colorado. It's interesting. I think Nebraska certainly has the edge, I think, defensively. And I really appreciate that point. I am curious about how these receivers for Nebraska will hold up against what has been a dynamic Illinois secondary. The Scott boys, Xavier Scott, I think might have forced the most turnovers in the Big Ten thus far. Miles Scott, not too far behind him. They've got some guys on that defense, both in the secondary, and then you've got a defensive line that I think is a little underrated. Pat Bryant, the wide receiver, I think is going to be a key for Illinois. He's probably the best receiver on both teams. I know that Nebraska's high on guys like Banks and Nair that transferred in.
Yeah.
But I think there's some interesting matchups. How do you think this game's going to play out, and what's your score?
Yeah, I think it's Illinois is going to jump out early. You mentioned the secondary for Illinois. I think Raiola makes a young mistake early, just because, I know he had the Colorado game and that was built up with a lot of hype. I think Illinois is a lot better than Colorado is. So I think it is his actual true test against a defense that's got an actual, I should say a fuller defense than Colorado's is, a more complete team in Illinois. So I think Illinois jumps out early, but I do like the rushing game in Nebraska and the defense to overall get them the win. So I have 24-17 Nebraska.
Okay. We are similar on this. Okay. I agree. I think the secondary versus Raiola will force him into mistakes early. And I think it might be a lead even at the half for Illinois. But I just, JR at the Big Ten Huddle made this point, and I think it's a really valid one. I just don't see Illinois' offensive line being able to protect Altmaier. I think Altmaier will make plays early. I think he's got better than expected mobility. I think Bryant might make some plays down the field. I just don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. And I think if they know what's coming, they're going to be able to tee off. And I think it's going to be a rough offensive outing. I have 24-13 Nebraska. Okay. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a turnover and a touchdown early, maybe like a 10-7 at the half. And then they kind of figure things out, run downhill. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Nebraska wins. And I think 24-17 and 24-13 is I think that's a good range for us. So we're going to go to Saturday. We're going to go to a game that's not nearly as close, but as a Buckeye fan, I'm still excited for. And that is Marshall at number 3, Ohio State. It's on Fox. It's the big noon kickoff game, which I just feel like Fox got outbid on this one because it's like you have a lot of games to pick from and you pick this one. Ohio State, 40-point favorite. Any doubt in this one?
As far as the victory, absolutely not. My key for Ohio State was to just show up to the stadium for this one. I will say, like, Marshall isn't like down in the dumps. Like, Marshall has seen lower lows than what they're at right now. Like, they played I'm blanking on them. Their UTSA was it at the start of the year, and they played them tight. Like, it wasn't a total blowout. And UTSA has had a solid squad going here for a couple of years, so I'm not expecting it to be close. The only question is if Ohio State will cover, in my opinion, and that's about as interesting as I think this one gets. But
it's actually a better opponent than UTSA. It was Virginia Tech.
Oh, was it Virginia Tech?
Yeah, at Virginia Tech, and they were in that game for quite a bit. Yeah, which will be relevant for another pick down the road. Yeah. But yeah, like I agree. I think Marshall, out of all the lesser opponents that they faced, this is probably the best one. Sure. But I agree. I think they need to show up, and I think they will. I think. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say. I mean, it's really their last cleanup game before they hit Big Ten play. I just don't see them letting Marshall be the team that derails what they think is a championship or bust season. So I think you're going to see a lot of running the ball against Marshall, and I just don't know how Marshall's going to score on them, to be honest.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a game where they try to get other guys involved. Like Jeremiah Smith has been huge for them.
Yeah.
The running backs had a big day against Western Michigan a couple weeks ago. I think this is the Emeka Ibuka game. I think he scores at least once through the air, and I think they'll get him on an end around for a rushing score as well. He has 0 touchdowns thus far. I think he gets at least 2 in this game. Okay. So I've got 59-3. I think the defense holds serve, no touchdowns. What do you got?
I was going to go 45-zip.
There you go. Similar. I mean, 56-45.
I know you're not supposed to predict shutouts. I just think Ohio State's just going to basically outmuscle them, not try anything too fancy, and just get in, get out, get to next week.
Yeah. Yeah. That defense is nasty. So I think a fun, especially after last week, Charlotte goes to Indiana. Big Ten Network, 12 p.m. Kurt Cignetti did not say Charlotte sucks, but I'm not sure he needs to say it in this game. Indiana's a 28-point favorite. Has Indiana ever been a 28-point favorite?
Not that I can remember in recent memory, but hats off to them and being at this point where they're at, because that's impressive.
Yeah, they got a legit QB1 in Curtis Rourke. He's a dude. Any sleepwalking in this game?
My only note was that as long as Indiana comes out ready to go, they should be fine. Letdowns in college football are absolutely a thing, and Indiana isn't Ohio State talented where they just got to show up there. So that would be the big thing. And then just keep playing aggressive defense. They have a few guys out. They got a late couple of second half targetings in that UCLA game. So I'm not the most expertise in Indiana's backup defensive players that came in for those guys, but I'm assuming it will be enough to get past Charlotte. So I wouldn't be shocked if they don't cover, just coming off a big win at UCLA. But I think the Hoosiers will win comfortably.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know who was ejected from the game in the second half?
I think they had 2 of them. It was the defensive tackle on the sack, and then
that's right.
And then I think it was I'm not going to remember the name of this.
I got it. CJ West and D'Angelo Pons.
Okay.
So defensive tackle and a corner.
Yeah.
And so they will not be able to play in the first half of this game, which Charlotte's not great, obviously, but that's that's not certainly not great. And Pons and West starters for them. West is their big nose guard, so
Yep.
I do think it's funny. I'm adjusting on the fly because I had forgotten. I watched the first half and the first part of the third quarter, and I saw that it was in hand, and I'm like,
yeah,
Georgia's losing. I need to watch that game. That changes things a little bit for me. I do have Indiana covering, but I do think Charlotte probably gets a little bit more run in the first half. I had 45-6, but I'm going to let Charlotte. I think Charlotte gets another touchdown or gets a touchdown. I think the first half is probably a little closer than Hoosier fans like with those ejections, because I don't think they have the depth. I think you're right on that. But I do think that it is. I just think Rourke and that receiving core is really good, and they're good, and they've got swag to them.
It seems like Indiana just has basketball players that are always good receivers. Like they seem to. I mean, they're better this year than years past, but like they always seem to have guys that can just go up and get the football. And this is another example of that. So I'm with you. I've been impressed with that receiving core and the passing game just as a whole. But
so I've got 45-13. What's your score?
I have a little bit lower scoring and a slight Charlotte cover. I have 38-13. Maybe a little bit slower start. Coming off, coming back from the West Coast also. So the travel is a little bit of a thing here as well. But I don't think it's ever in any real danger.
Yeah, agreed. Speaking of probably no real danger, Villanova at Maryland. I gave Mike Loxley props this week, so that's my only trepidation, because when I praise a coach that I have notoriously gotten upset at, then they fail me. But I just don't think Villanova's in danger. This is a 12 p.m. kick, Big Ten Network. No line yet because it is an FCS team. There will be a line later this week. This is recorded on Monday. This is dropping on Thursday. So if you're like, the line's dropped, what do you mean? It's because we're recording on Monday night. But Villanova 3-0 in the FCS. So like not a terrible FCS team, but does Maryland have any issues with these guys?
I don't think so. I know Maryland's had some hiccups on defense here. I just don't think that Villanova is going to be the team to keep up with them. And I didn't write down, what's Maryland's quarterback's name?
Billy Edwards.
Billy Edwards. I didn't know anything about him coming into the season, and I actually thought he's looked way more solid than I thought he would. At least more than I was expecting. They had Tua's younger brother for forever there. And now stepping into him, I didn't know how that transition would look. And he's been great. I think he's been probably one of the more impressive parts of their team. So I think he's going to, even if they come out slow, I expect him to get the job done. So I don't think Villanova is going to be much work for Maryland.
Yeah. What's your score on this one?
I didn't even write one down when looking at this one game, but 45-10 sounds good.
I've got 41-10. So
okay, there we go.
Yeah, we've been eerily close. So far on these.
Same way.
I agree. I think the receiving core. I think Edwards has looked better than expected. Ty Felton is on a torrid pace right now. Averaging 149 yards receiving per game, has 4 touchdowns. Prather had a really good game, had a touchdown against Virginia last week. And I do think that defense is a little bit better than I expected. Secondary has been good. The linebackers are better even without Barham. And I just think they're going to overwhelm, similar to how they overwhelmed UConn. I think they'll overwhelm Villanova. So speaking of overwhelmed, this, believe it or not, unlike previous weeks, there will be very there are very few of these overwhelmed games than we've had because we got some good ones coming up. This one is not going to be one of them. Kent State at number 10 Penn State. I am covering this game for the College Huddle. So first time I've ever been credentialed at a college game. They didn't let me get into the Penn State Ohio State game because I wasn't big enough, but they let me come to Kent State where I have 59-3. So I not much in that. No, sorry, 52-3. So not much analysis other than I don't think they're going to sleepwalk. I don't think Kent State is nearly as good as Bowling Green. I don't think they're going to struggle in this one. Anything to add to this one, Kurt?
I wrote down a note for Kent State, and it was get that money and have fun because they came off a beating last week against Tennessee. Tennessee with the onside kick in the first half, up 30. It's like, come on, just let them. You know what they're there for. They're there to collect the check, to build the program, and get out of there as fast as they can. Another one, I didn't write down a score, but 54-3. I mean, I can't imagine they're up for Penn State after what just happened at Tennessee. Probably a little bit better after getting your butt whooped like that. But yeah, I mean, how much is Penn State actually going to open it up? Maybe they use it as a practice game to get Drew Aller going here before Big Ten play. But not a whole lot of analysis needed on this one, I don't think.
Yeah, as I say, I think Penn State after this, they do get Illinois next week. So this, I wonder if they'll use it to let Drew Aller kind of try some things to get ready for a good secondary. But
probably not a bad idea.
Here's my question is, after that onside kick that Tennessee ran, does James Franklin do the same thing and just be like, hey, we're just trying things?
Yeah, no chance. No chance.
He's like, I'm not doing that.
No.
Maybe that should be my question in the post game press conference. Why didn't you run an onside kick like Tennessee?
Did the film give you any thoughts about running an onside kick on them at any point in this game, just based on what you saw on tape? No, that was ridiculous. I really can't believe Tennessee did that. But
yeah, I'd get booted out of the press conference after that. It's like, who do you think we are? Do you think we're some SEC team? What is this? We're classy. That's what the Big Ten is. We're classy. So we're gonna move. Speaking of the SEC, we're gonna move to UCLA at number 16 LSU. UCLA coming off a rough loss to Indiana, and now they've got to go to Baton Rouge against an LSU team that has not looked, I don't think has looked up to their number 16 ranking, right? They lost to USC, gave up 21 to Nicholls State, honestly should have lost to South Carolina, like got jobbed by the officials. LSU, a 24.5 point favorite. It's a 340 kick on ABC Eastern time. Does UCLA have any shot in this game? And if so, like what's the pathway to victory here?
Este episodio es presentado por Treats para Perros Busy Bone. Cuando estás tan busy que tu día suena así, pero tu perro suena así. Solo abre una bolsa de Treats para Perro Busy Bone. Saca un Busy Bone y disfruta de tu nueva habilidad de mantener a tu perro busy. Cuando la vida te da busy, dale a tu perro Busy Bone.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
I don't see it. I mean, create turnovers. I mean, clearly LSU's defense has given up some big plays. They did it against USC and they did it against South Carolina. So whatever UCLA can do to try and exploit that. I mean, I predicted UCLA to finish last in the Big Ten this year, preseason. I know that's a lot of people did. And here's where I will give them credit. It's when Indiana jumped out to a really hot start against them, and UCLA made that a 1-score game or 2-score game and had the ball, to start the third quarter. And so they were fighting back, and then I think they turned it over. So you just couldn't really sustain. They did bounce back, but they didn't have a counter for Indiana's counter. Okay. Yeah. And I just think that's going to be an issue for them. It's not an effort thing, really. It's not like they're just quit out there when Indiana got up big. So I think it's going to start out tighter. I think it'll be maybe a 10-point game at half, but I just don't see them slowing down LSU for the entirety of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think UCLA fans will have things to be excited about at points. Like I think Sturdivant, like he's a really good receiver, explosive. Garbers, I think, has some good, and I think LSU's defense, I think they struggle. They've struggled all year. I mean, they struggled against USC. They struggled against, Nicholls State. They could not slow down South Carolina. So I think UCLA is going to put up points. I think the issue is actually going to be UCLA's defense and their ability to stop LSU. I will say this. I don't think LSU stubs their toe here. I really don't. I have them covering. But I think UCLA is not the best coach team, and part of that is just Deshaun Foster's young. He was a running backs coach a year ago. I think he needs time to develop, and I'm not sure this is going to be the best spot for him long term. I think going to a G5 school where he can learn and develop as a coach could be really good for him. I think Brian Kelly stinks. And I said this after the USC game, USC I don't think was more talented. I think they were better coached. And
that for sure, yeah.
And I am not I think there's going to be some gaffes for LSU. At the end of the day, though, I think LSU has too much firepower, and I think this defensively, I don't think UCLA is going to be able to stop LSU. So I agree. I think close at half. Ultimately, I have 52-24 that LSU covers, runs away with it. What's your score?
I have 41-14 LSU, so I don't have UCLA putting up quite as many points, but they could. I mean, those are very valid reasons, and UCLA's given up a lot of big plays LSU's given up a lot of big plays this year, and so they could take advantage of that. It's a great uniform game, though. I just want to point that out. UCLA and LSU, two of the best in all of college football. So
those powder blues are. Yeah. Although they won't be wearing the powder blue. Well, no, they will because
LSU tends to wear white at home. I don't know what they got planned. If they got something planned this game, they'll mix in the purple. But
that'll be fun if they wear blues and the whites.
Yeah,
that'll be. Yeah, part of my thought with the 24 too. I think there could be a backdoor, touchdown. Sure. Not backdoor cover, but backdoor touchdown at the end.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think we both think they cover. I think it's going to be rough for UCLA. We'll go, I think, to maybe a competitive game, but of two disappointing teams, and that's Purdue at Oregon State. 8:30 on the CW, which is that's just weird to say that the CW is showing football. Oregon State's a 4.5-point favorite. Both of these teams got blown out, but I think one team looked, they seemed to have a bit more fight.
Yep.
Purdue kind of felt like they quit last week. Initial thought on this one?
Yeah, a lot of people were high on Purdue after that week 1 dominating win over the School of the Blind, but it just did. And that's not a shot at Purdue. I was impressed. I was like, wow, they look a lot better than I thought. So I wasn't going all in on them after that first game. I really thought they were going to cover, though. I really did. And they just had zero answers for the run. And after a bye, I believe they were on a bye week the week before, if I'm not mistaken. So That's concerning for me because that probably shows that that's an issue that's going to be tough to correct over time. And the Beavers can run the football. That is the strength of their offense. So I like Oregon State pretty comfortably in this one, especially with Purdue going to them. I'm not saying they can't keep it close. I just, seeing Notre Dame run for, did they get 400 yards or did it stop in the 300 yards rushing?
I think Jeremiah Love just scored another touchdown. So
okay. Yeah, exactly. So it's tough to get that out of my mind. I think Oregon State's in like a 31-20 type game for that.
Yeah, I have it a little lower scoring, but I'm on the same wavelength. When you get your butt kicked like that, like Oregon State, like they kept it close in the first half. Like it was a game until the third quarter. It was never a game for Purdue. Yeah. And now you've got to travel to Oregon State. You got to travel, like you've got to pick yourself up. You got beat up. You got demoralized. Like Oregon State, you can point to the score and say they got demoralized, but I think it's just different. And again, Oregon State can run. Purdue is never going to be known as a running team, even with guys like Maccabee. And like I think Hankerson, he's averaging over 5 yards a clip, 5 touchdowns on the season. McCoy can run at quarterback.
Yeah.
I think Oregon State probably plays a little keep away.
Sure.
And I have them covering still 24-13 is my score. But I can totally see. I can see a scenario where it plays out where it's a little higher scoring, like Hudson Card has more time.
Yeah, when I was thinking of this game, I thought Oregon State would break a couple long ones. Just thinking about it, but yeah, I could definitely see they go back. They're obviously going to be focused on stopping the run because they know the Beavers are going to test that repeatedly. I mean, they'd be foolish not to in this game, but I could see how it's a little bit lower scoring than what I got.
Yeah. The one, I think your score makes sense if Dylan Thieneman plays as poorly as he did against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Which I think that was maybe the most disappointing thing, and not to call him out specifically, but like the safety play, which is Ryan Walters' specialty. Oh, that was bad.
Yeah. I completely get that because he's a super talented player. So his, your expectations for him are just naturally higher than anyone else. But Purdue was just getting moved up front too. They really didn't have anything to counter that at all. So
yeah, they had their soul taken from them, and it's hard. There's a scenario here too, and who knows? Maybe Hudson Card's like, let me put the team on my back and throws 5 touchdowns.
I still like Hudson Card. I know that was no one played well for Purdue last year. He's still super talented in my opinion.
Yeah. I think there's also a scenario where you just got your soul taken from you. And this is like a massive blowout. And like, it's like Notre Dame beat you twice. And I hope that's not the case, because I really don't want to see Ryan Walters like as a coach and like Hudson Card as a player. Yeah. Like I really don't want to see them pack it in this early in the season, because I want to believe in Purdue. Like sure. It's just tough to think that they're going to win this game. So
yeah,
let's move on. We're going to go, I think, to I don't have them up here. Hold on. Let me make a banner here. Northwestern is taking on Washington in a battle of the purple in the Big Ten. Who's the better purple team in the Big Ten? There we go. There's my banner. My very makeshift banner.
Just uniform wise, I gotta go Washington.
That's fair.
Gold and purple. I'm also a Vikings fan, so that might play into it. But Winona State shirt on. Me and David Brown went to the same college here in Minnesota.
Really?
Yeah, he's a Winona State alum. He played. I just went to school there. Yeah. So again, I didn't see the updated spread, but when I looked at it, it was, I believe it opened at Washington as 12-point favorites.
and that's come down to 10.5. This
Okay.
is
That sounds a
7
lot better.
7 p.m. kick on FS1, by the way. But
Yeah.
10.5 Washington.
Yep. Listen, I know. So Washington lost a heartbreaker. But I'm still. I thought they still looked like a good quality team, even though they did lose. I really didn't know how it would look losing the head coach and all the reshuffling that goes into that with certain players leaving the portal and whatnot. And not to mention they put, all those players in the NFL after last year's team. So I like what they got going. It was a tough loss, but Northwestern's just got big questions at quarterback and not a consistent ability to move the ball. Now Braun does do a good job. I feel like there's usually just some angle that he gets the offense to be able to do something that's given them some kind of life. And that defense is fundamentally sound. So I like Northwestern to cover, but I think Washington's going to win. I'll let you go before we say actual scores. But.
I am actually going a Washington cover, but I do think I wonder if it's a cover late.
Sure.
And I think for a lot of the things, like Northwestern's defense, is better than I think people give it credit for. I think the D-line, they have a lot of depth on the D-line.
Yeah.
Xander Mueller, I think he is as old school linebacker in the Big Ten as they come. And he's really good. He's really good. The secondary concerns me for Northwestern. I think against Duke, they were really exploited by Malik Murphy and those wide receivers. And I think Will Rogers can exploit them with Denzel Boston, with Giles Jackson. They've got speed, and I think that can really give them heartburn. And I think with Jonah Coleman, that bell cow back, I still think Washington's a little disjointed because of all the turnover, but I agree with you. I think from a talent standpoint, they're actually a little bit better than I expected. I think Jed Fish cost them the game last week, but penalties cost them, lack of discipline cost them. But then that fourth down play, just a head scratcher. And I know I'm not the only one. I think Brock Heward is still, he's still yelling on his podcast about that play.
Yeah.
Washington should have won that game. They were the more talented team. All credit to Dickert at Washington State. He had those boys ready to play. So that's not any Cougars fans that have wandered over here that are saying that we think Washington State stink, that Washington is the better team. Washington State was really coached up. We're saying Washington is the more talented team. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I think Washington rights the ship. I don't think Northwestern has quite the talent that Washington State does. You're going to Washington, which I just think is a really tough place to play.
It is, yeah.
I've got 28-13 as my score.
Okay. Yeah, I got 23-14 Washington, so a slight. Well, initially it was a cover for Northwestern if the line moved. Well, I have a 9-point win for Washington, so that would still be a Northwestern cover. I just think their defense is going to play well enough to keep it sloppy in a way that just keeps Northwestern in those kind of games, But I agree. Will Rogers is looking solid. He's been solid his whole career wherever he's been. So I think Washington, you're right, just exploits him a little bit too much in the air and gets the W. Yeah.
Fun game though. I think people might look at Northwestern and be like, eh. And I think Northwestern is going to be a thorn. They're going to be pesky for a lot of teams this year.
Yep.
And I would not be surprised if they get somebody at some point, just how did Northwestern do? Similar to last year. You're just oh, you'll beat Northwestern. And then they, go
get
on
8 wins.
Stupid run. And you're like, what in the world's going on?
Yeah.
Didn't you do what Washington did last week against Duke?
I've been really impressed with David Brunt, not just because we went to the same school or anything. I just think he does a really good job at running. He seems to find a game plan that always gives them the best chance to win. There's not a lot of coaching decisions. Although they did have a questionable play as well there at the end in the Duke game. But I was going to say, I don't see a lot of a lot of questionable coaching decisions come out of those games. I always feel like he's got them ready to go and what's going to be their best chance at winning. So, but yeah, should be a Washington W.
Yeah. I think another really fun game, old Big East rivalry, Rutgers at Virginia Tech. This game has shifted in my mind a lot. So, but tell me your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I have notes on this one. I love Rutgers in this matchup. Virginia Tech has not been great at stopping the run.
Yes.
They're giving up over 5 yards a carry. That's Rutgers' bread and butter. Kyle Monangai is just going to get the ball probably 30 times this game. Virginia Tech's still a solid team, and Rutgers is going there, but I just picture a low-scoring slugfest. But to me, that all plays into Rutgers' hands. So and not only that, Virginia Tech's given up 8 sacks this season to not great competition. I mean, they got the surprise loss to Vandy. That stuff happens. That it shouldn't have happened probably, but it did. I just think Rutgers is gonna out physical them and get this W. I really do.
Yeah. I forgot to mention this is 3:30 on the ACC network. Virginia Tech a 3-point favorite, which means if this is neutral site, Vegas sees this as even.
Yeah.
So I think that's just helpful context that anybody who thinks, well, Virginia Tech, similar to last year, like Virginia Tech's the better team, just realize the way Vegas sees this is they see them even. And so preseason, I picked Virginia Tech over Rutgers because I'm like, I just don't know. Like, I think Virginia Tech ended the season well. I think they have more talent than people realize. And even with the Vandy loss, I was like, I don't know. I don't know about Rutgers. And one of the things that has two things that's concerned me. One is how will the running game fare against better competition without Wimsatt? I think Kaliak Manis is the better passer night and day. Like, right. He's far superior to Wimsatt, which isn't saying much because Wimsatt was not he was not good. At least at throwing the ball, but he added a dynamic threat as a runner. And I think I'm like, does that change things for Rutgers? I'm also concerned, I think with Teray being out, the defense hasn't looked as solid early in games. Like Akron made some plays on them in the first half.
Sure.
Howard, moved the ball a little bit on them. Defensive line at times has not been as disruptive as I would have liked. But your key was the same key I saw, which is Virginia Tech can't stop the run.
Yeah.
And those teams aren't good.
Right.
And I think Rutgers is better than all 3 teams that Virginia Tech has faced by a considerable margin. And so I agree. I think I think they control the clock. I wrote down 28-20, which might be a little too high scoring, but I think between Monangai and Brown, I think Brown is their second back. Like they have a good offensive line. I think Kaliak Manis throws just enough to guys like Demir Miller and Christian Dremel to keep them honest. Monangai has a big day. Brown has a big day. And I just think they control the clock, win the line of scrimmage, and win by a possession.
Yeah, I think Rutgers controls the whole game. I think it's a little bit tighter. I have 20-16, but I think I agree with everything you just said. I think Virginia Tech's kicking field goals while Rutgers is able to punch it in the end zone a few bit more times. And I just think Rutgers is going to win the field position battle for all the reasons you said. So I like Rutgers a lot, and especially with that spread.
Yeah. I think that's I'm honestly with how Virginia Tech, and who knows, maybe Vegas is thinking because Lane Stadium. Yeah, I know typically it's a 3-point swing for home team, but it's not a night game either, which I think does change the dynamic a little bit with the home field advantage as well. So, yeah. But yeah, I think Rutgers is going to do well in this game. I think this next game is, they're all interesting. but we're talking about a possible 4-0 start for the Michigan State Spartans going to Boston College, who I think shocked everybody by beating Florida State. Turns out Florida State's not very good.
Yeah.
Kept it semi-close with Mizzou last week.
Oh yeah.
This is a tough one for me to pick. Where are your thoughts? Where are you landing on this game?
So I have two thoughts. One, I like what I'm seeing out of Sparty so far. I think Joe Rossi's got that defense swarming to the football. They've been a lot better, a lot more fundamentally sound than they were last year. Finally didn't have any quarterback turnovers from trials last week. Wasn't the most difficult opponent that they faced, but still that was good to see. And I think he's really athletic. They're going to need to make some plays, though. This Boston College rushing attack is legit. They have three backs over 100 yards on the season already. Their quarterback is right there as well. I just think that they're going to be running the football, not going crazy, not bursting, huge runs on them the whole time. I just worry about Michigan State's defense being on the field for too long until where Boston College starts to maybe separate from Sparty in this one. So I do like Boston College in this one, but on the same hand, I am impressed with what Michigan State has shown so far. I just think this is a tough matchup, and a matchup that I gave them preseason, but I didn't know Boston College was going to come out rocking and rolling this year.
Yeah. By the way, 8 p.m. kick on the ACC network, Boston College, a 6.5-point favorite. That feels actually a little high to me. And I think agree with everything you said. The rushing attack for Boston College, I think, is legit. I'm really curious who wins the line of scrimmage here, because I think Michigan State's lines have played better than I expected.
Yeah.
Now that has not resulted in like big rushing numbers. Now Lynch Adams has been decent. He has 210 yards on 34 carries. Had a couple of big runs, which kind of added to it. Same thing with Nathan Carter. Had a big run against, Prairie View A&M, where are they again? Texas, I think. I'd never heard of them until last week. And, but they beat a game Maryland team on the road. Now you're going on the road again. To me, I am just concerned. I think Michigan State might be able to slow down Boston College's run game. I think they may be able to slow down Castellanos, the quarterback for Boston College, and limit big plays. But I think where I'm concerned is I'm not sure Michigan State can consistently run the ball.
Yeah.
And if you're forcing Aiden Childs to be the everything guy, like, yes, he got them out of a tough spot against Maryland, and Nick Marsh, played well. He's elevated as a receiver. He threw 3 picks against Maryland, and like that almost lost him the game.
Yep.
And I'm like, if you're telling me pick between Castellanos, who is a dynamic player at quarterback, who's veteran, versus a young developmental guy who I think has all the potential in the world, and I think will be really good, but is now playing a decent defense. I think that's where it gets really tough. I'm not sure that Michigan State will be able to run the ball consistently. And that forces Aiden Childs to be Superman. And I think that's when you get into trouble. And so I've got 20-17 Boston College. What do you got?
Okay. I have 28-17 Boston College. So I do think they pull away. I just think if Sparty's going to win, it's going to be Boston College has long drives and they get slowed up in the red zone and settle for field goals while Michigan State goes down, makes a big play and scores a touchdown. I just think this Boston College team is really good, and it's not anything against Sparty. They definitely have a chance. I just think Boston College pulls away in the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think Boston College. But I would say if you're a Spartan fan listening to this, don't take our picks as like, oh, Michigan State's definitely going to lose. Like there's a real path.
I'm not betting this one at all because I feel like it could go so many different ways depending on turnovers, big plays that happen, all the reasons we mentioned.
Yeah. There's a real potential that Childs throws 3 picks and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, you are playing
he's
with
a dynamic
fire.
guy. He's just young.
Yeah. But it'll be fun. The 3:30 game on CBS. It is that team up north, USC, number 11 USC. They're not the team up north. Number 11 USC taking on the team up north, number 18 Michigan. This is at Michigan. USC a 5.5 point favorite. I'm surprised actually how low that line is, but
I think it opened at 3, so money's coming in on the Trojans.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on this game? Alex Orji, the starter in this game, it's been announced, which, depending on how you feel about announcing the starter this early in the week, regardless. But what are your thoughts on this game?
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
This episode is brought to you by AutoTrader. Look around. What do you see? Cars. Lots of them. And guess what? They're probably on AutoTrader. Whether you're into timeless classics or the latest trends, if you see it on the road, you can likely find it on AutoTrader. New, used, electric, and one day, maybe even flying cars. See a car? Find it on AutoTrader. Visit autotrader.com to learn more.
I want to pick Michigan at home, USC traveling to them. I still think what Michigan did last week was somewhat important. They really got back to being able to run the ball. I know the opponent wasn't all world or anything, and USC's front looked good against LSU, but LSU was gashing them in the run. So if Michigan's going to win, they're going to have to use Alex Orji throwing the ball as just to keep them honest. If he can just keep USC from overloading the box, I think Michigan has the line still and the backs to be able to move the ball on the ground against USC. So really curious. I mean, that's to me what's going to dictate who wins this game is how much Michigan's offense can maybe just give their defense a break or not let their defense get gassed out. Flip side of that, I also have down Miller Moss is just by far the best offensive player, I think, in this game. And then they also have the little receiver Branch, is it?
Zachariah Branch.
Yeah, he's a fantastic player as well. I don't think you can necessarily stop him, but you got to be able to contain him. And I do think Michigan's defense will do a good job of that. I just think in the end, Michigan's offense isn't able to do quite enough, and I just trust the superior quarterback play in Miller Moss to get the job done.
Yeah. We're so similar in how we're thinking. It's kind of scary how similar we're.
I really want to see you. I forgot to mention the offensive line for USC as well. I think Michigan's D-line is probably the best. They haven't always played up to it this year, but I think their D-line is still probably the best that they've seen this year. So that's another thing to watch.
Yeah. So last week I felt very proud of it. I made some bad picks last week. I had Purdue beating Notre Dame being the worst of it. But I said last week, I thought Michigan would not like how they would perform against Arkansas State. And it's just one of those games where if you don't blow them out, it's the type of game that maybe they exploit some of your weaknesses and you're like, oh, we're going to lose by 30 or 40 to Ohio State. FYI, as an Ohio State fan, I'm still scared as all get out of that game at November 30th.
Yeah.
Like I don't care like how bad they look up until that point. I think USC fans are not going to like me saying this. I think they got the benefit of a poorly coached team against LSU, and then they played a not very good team in Utah State. So like they're 2-0, they had a bye. I think everyone kind of thinks, yeah, they're really, really good. I'm not saying they're fool's gold. Like I think USC is a legitimate top 20 team. I think if Trojan fans, you think that what's going to happen against Michigan this week is going to be what happened when they played Texas, I think you are in for a rude awakening.
Yeah.
Because you're not Texas. Like I think the offensive line still has a few questions. I think the defense still has questions. Like I think LSU, if they were well coached, may have put up 30 to 40.
I don't know why they stopped running in that game, but
yeah. I mean, just poorly coached, poor decisions. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like. I think Danton Lynn has done wonders for them.
Yep.
But I think both things can be true. Like I think you can say Danton Lynn has done a really good job, and also I don't think the defense is all the way fixed. And that's something, I say that something that JR and I on the huddle agree with. Like we agree with each other on, and it sounds like you're on that same wavelength. Is that I think there's a lot in USC that is encouraging, but I wouldn't put the cart before the horse. And so I think there's a real pathway for Michigan to win this game. Khalil Mullings, like I think if they come up with a creative game plan with Alex Orji, like I think that his dynamic ability to run, if they don't telegraph his quarterback runs, I think that becomes a very scary rushing attack. The real question for Michigan is the offensive line, and can the defense not get gassed, which I think you brought up really well in your point, is that I think the first wave of Michigan defenders is elite. The problem is they get tired. And so I think this is close. I think Michigan may have a lead in the third quarter. Ultimately, I do think the athleticism of the receivers, you've got Zachariah Branch, who you mentioned, who's the Lane, Jacoby Lane has really stepped up for them. I think Miller Moss might be the second best quarterback they face all year. Quinn Ewers being the number one guy. Miller Moss is and I might put Miller Moss even above Dylan Gabriel. And Dylan Gabriel's great. He's in the perfect system for him. Some of the throws Moss made against LSU were just, chef's kiss, right?
Yeah,
I mean, whew.
Yeah.
So I have a close game.
Me too.
27-23 USC over Michigan.
Yeah, I have 28-27 USC.
Yeah, we're like right on this. Yeah. So I think it'll be a fun one. I think it'll be a really good game.
I think it's going to be. I'm so curious to see, because if USC comes out and makes Michigan have to throw, then all of a sudden USC is like, okay, maybe they are coming for, in that Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State conversation as far as teams with the chance to win the Big Ten, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree, but I'm
not saying it will happen. I'm just saying if it does happen that way.
Yeah, I think that would not be good for Michigan, obviously, and would say I think some really good things about USC. But yeah, I don't see that happening.
Yeah,
I think USC is going to struggle a bit.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Kurt, we're going to talk about the one that you care about the most, the Floyd of Rosedale, our last game pick. What are your keys to the game here?
Oh man, it's the weirdest. I think it's the weirdest year to predict it, in my opinion. And it's not just because it's a little earlier. It's that the Gophers are a pass first team right now, and that's just something that's taking some getting used to. The O-line play for the Gophers worries me. I think both defensive units have the advantage against the opposing offense in this game, which is pretty normal for this game. Let's be honest. Caleb Johnson's a stud.
Yeah.
I think I saw he's first in the Big Ten, I think, in yards after contact and second in forced missed tackles. So that makes me think back to the UNC game where the Gophers finished with 21 missed tackles against Omar Hampton, who's a terrific back in his own right, but they're going back up against another running back of that same caliber. Now, I think the defense has made strides, but, competition hasn't been quite to what Iowa will be. And then if I were to look at this from an Iowa side, I'm kind of curious to see how much their offensive line is able to push the Gophers front, because the Gophers front has been pretty good. Even against North Carolina, it wasn't amazing, but it was still overall pretty solid. If the Gophers can force Cade to throw it, then it gets pretty interesting. So yeah, if the Gophers are going to win, I'm guessing they're going to see tight coverage just of how their offense has been, a lot of dink and dunk. I'm guessing Iowa's going to force them to beat them deep. So when the shots are there, Minnesota's going to be able to have to hit them. Iowa has given up a few long scores this year, which is kind of odd for them. So when the opportunities are there, Minnesota's going to have to hit it. And then, you're going to have to bottle up Caleb Johnson. Whoever's defense can flip the field and cause the most turnovers for their team is going to win this game.
Yeah. The one area that I think has alarmed me about Iowa, it's actually multiple areas, but I think maybe the most staggering one, Iowa keeps giving up big plays. Against Iowa State, they gave up a long touchdown pass. Against Troy, they gave up 2 long touchdowns. And that one was I was going to say one was in garbage time, but no, they made it 24-21. So, the game was still in the balance. Now, Iowa dressed it up well, and it was 38-21 at the end. But that, and then the special teams have not been special. That really concerns me with Iowa, because I think if you told me that Iowa has subpar quarterback play, a really good running back, a good offensive line, and a top 5 defense, I'm saying they're going to go 10-2, 11-1. They're going to be a Big Ten contender, because they don't, who cares about the quarterback? They won 10 games with Cade Mack or with Deacon Hill last year as their starter at the end of the season. Who cares? All of a sudden you've got a leaky defense. Now, leaky is not the same as bad, right? They're really stout in the front seven.
They're great on defense again overall, but they have been giving up some different.
Yeah, and I think, to me, that maybe the difference or the key to this game is, can Brosmer hit guys like Brockington, Daniel Jackson down the field? I think Caleb Johnson is a really good back. I think their offense. So here's what I say. I think Iowa's offensive line is superior to the offensive line that they faced against UNC. I think Omarion Hampton is the better back out of the two. Which is not to say that Caleb Johnson's bad. I just think Caleb Johnson has had a bit more of a head of steam than Hampton has had. And so that matchup still concerns me a little bit. I might say the same is true though for Iowa's facing Minnesota's defensive line. I think their defensive line is the best defensive line that they'll have faced. And so I think there's a lot of interesting interplay. I didn't say it. I've been terrible at saying the time and spread. 7:30 kick on NBC. Iowa's a 2.5-point favorite. It's at Minnesota. So it's interesting. Vegas sees Iowa as a favorite, even as the away team. What's your score prediction here, Kurt? I'm going to put you on the hot seat.
All right. Gosh. I'm going to go Gophers. I'm going to be a homer. I'm going to go Gophers. And that, I really think they can win. I just think there's a lot of variables that both teams aren't super sure on at the moment. Gophers offensive line. Wally's hurt, probably not in this game, our top corner. Cody Lindenberg is in an arm brace, but still playing last week. So that was curious to see. Just a lot of question marks. I'm going to go Gophers 19-17. low scoring, field goal wins it. Floyd stays home.
You're going to be eating bacon on Sunday morning.
Yep, absolutely.
It really is scary how close we've been on so many of these games. I think Max Brosmer hits a couple of deep shots. I know that's been a tough. There's been some drops.
Yeah,
they haven't attempted it much, but they have been trying to open up the offense for Minnesota, which is encouraging to me. I think Iowa's going to have to settle for field goals. And I think Minnesota gets a game-winning field goal. And I forget the kicker's name.
Dragan Kesic.
Dragan Kesic's redemption for Kesic.
I like it.
17-16.
Okay.
Minnesota.
Hey, I'll take that. It should be a great game. I think you're going to learn a lot about both of these teams just because, they're obviously ticked over the Iowa State loss. We're ticked over the North Carolina loss.
Yep.
I think the defenses are both going to look really good this game. I knock on wood. I don't want to jinx because Iowa has put up points, not the last time, but every time leading up to that, they put up some points in Minnesota, like more than their season average. But obviously hope that's not the case. I think both defenses will shine and should be a great game.
Yeah. I think it'll be a really good, competitive, close. It'll be great. Well, Kurt, tell folks if they want some of the best Minnesota content out there, where do they find you guys?
Yeah, we're SkyU Pod. We're on YouTube, and then we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you can listen. We do audio and video. So YouTube for video, podcast everywhere else, and then we're on X at SkyU Pod 1 if you want to follow us on social media. I'll say it. I say it every time I'm on the show, but I'm usually the one running the accounts. If you get mad at a take or a tweet, don't go after my co-hosts. They're good guys. It's me. So you can come at me.
I would say, I don't know if I've ever seen a take that you've had that wasn't at least mostly reasonable. So
and most of the time when I throw out crap talk, it's really not much. It's just poking the bear here and there. Nothing major.
Oh man.
I hope Iowa read the rule book. We don't want any, big excitement at the end of this game. Yeah, I've been curious to see if it's still flooded down there from all the tears that they've been crying since that game happened. It's been quite the adventure, but they made that win way more enjoyable than I ever thought it could be. So thank you, Iowa, and we should have a good one this Saturday.
I think this has been a great episode. I think the most enjoyable episode is I think that's the first time I've ever heard you trash another opponent, and it's amazing.
So here's the thing: I go on. We're doing our crossover with our College Huddle partners. 12 Saturdays, the Iowa podcast tomorrow night. So that'll be a late record. So we'll see when that goes up. Probably Wednesday morning or late Tuesday. But should be good.
Yeah. Yeah, Joel and the boys do a good job over at 12 Saturdays. They're good. So, well, make sure you guys follow SkyU Pod. Kurt, thanks, man, for coming, for bringing, not just giving your thoughts on Minnesota, but really bringing a lot of good insight into a lot of these games. Great to have you on the show as always. So
Appreciate
thanks for coming.
Always love being on here. Thanks for having me, and we'll see you again.
For sure. To the rest of you, take care. God bless.